Okay, this session I'm working on MPDInfoScreen2 again. This session, just refactorings and fixes, so not much to talk about. The first change is, well, if you see, the usage of MPDDisplay is putting it in a unique pointer class from the standard library. The change is to put in an optional class instead. The main difference this causes is that MPDDisplay is initialized on the stack instead of the heap. Anything dynamically allocated, like with malloc or new, or using some kind of pointer structure, especially with standard library containers like vector or unique pointer, that is stored on the heap. Anything that's directly not used malloc or new or whatever, that's on the stack and it lives in the lifetime of the scope it's declared in. An optional happens to store the templated type as part of itself. So that means if you have an optional and it's not within like a heap allocated thing, like if you just declare an optional in your main, then it's stack allocated and it's on your main scope. You should, if you don't know about heap and stack allocation, you should research malloc, and well, a Google search or whatever should explain enough difference between memory on the heap and memory on the stack. So basically, this change moves MPD client or MPDDisplay to the stack instead of the heap, and keeps the functionality that it originally had. An optional has a special variable for constructing things in place. It uses the std : in underscore place global variable to indicate to the constructor to construct the templated type in place. The next change I'm going to work on is when HostPrompt asks for address or socket path, the up and down arrow will always wrap around. In other words, regardless of up or down, it's going to change the selection. Before, it would be, if you hit up, it would stay on the top if it was at the top, and if you hit down, it would stay at the bottom. Just a minor behavior change, so the up and down on the keyboard will always change the selection. This next change, I'm removing the ternary expressions and replacing them by a enclosing if-else statement, or if-else-if. Because the ternary at the end of each of those function calls, it's basically a branching statement at each call. So instead of having like 3 or 4 branching statements per section, it's going to have only one global encompassing, well, function encompassing if. Should be more efficient in runtime, but it's not that big of a deal because drawing 2 rectangles and 4 texts every draw frame is not that heavy. It's not that much of an overhead considering there can be scenes where you're drawing like thousands of triangles in a 3D scene. Raylib does support 3D models. It's kind of interesting. I've done it for a demo on my website on jumpartifact.com. Yeah, Raylib can do yeah, 3D rendering. So a simple only draw 2 rectangles and 4 texts every draw frame is nothing compared to like thousands or 10,000s of triangles in a 3D scene, which is again not that big of a deal. The next thing I'm working on is just cleanup of debug prints. A minor change to the first one to log the size, and the rest of them are removed. Again, thanks to Clang format for formatting things under 80 characters wide. There's a history behind the 80 character limit, if you want to look it up. Just some testing here to make sure that it works. This next refactoring checks the when MPDInfoScreen2 loses connection, there's a counter that goes up to 5 to reattempt connections, and if it reaches 5, it stops running. The problem is that there isn't enough, or not there isn't enough. There isn't a place in the code that resets the connection attempts counter to 0 after a successful connection. So to do that, I add some stuff to actually reset to 0 if the connection is established using a ping function provided by the MPD client class. Ping, well, I think I'm pretty sure the MPD protocol provides a ping contact thing so that if you send a ping, the server responds. And it's just to check that the connection is working well. So all I have to do is set up the reinitialize MPD client, update once to establish the connection, and then do a ping check to make sure the connection is up. And when those things have happened, that is when I can reset the reset counter to 0. So this spot in the code, MPD client gets reinitialized. So this is where I force the update to establish the connection and then check the ping to reset the counter. So as you can see in this test, I'm checking if the reattempt counter resets by restarting MPD, stopping and restarting MPD. And it looks like it works. This final refactoring I'm doing is reordering the member variable inside of MPD client, the socket path, to where the rest of the strings are, for the sake of parameter packing, which is a topic of its own. Apparently Rust handles parameter packing for you, but in C and C++, the member variables are stored exactly in the order you give it, which is why parameter packing is a thing in C and C++. That means if you have like a character as the first variable and a 4-byte integer as the second variable, there's going to be 3 bytes in between padding because the 4-byte integer has to be aligned to 4 bytes. There's basically a requirement for every value, every integer type and every type that has integer types and so on has to be aligned by basically the number of bytes it encompasses. So if you have, like the example I gave before, a single character and then a 4-byte integer, the 4-byte integer has to be on a 4-byte boundary. So the alignment forces there to be a 3-byte buffer between the character and the 4-byte integer, character being 1 byte. By moving this string member variable to where the other strings are, I minimize the issues caused by parameter packing. It would be better to put the largest stuff first in a struct or class and order things by size down to the smallest one for the most ideal parameter pack class or struct. In the grand scheme of things, it might not matter too much, but if it's a struct or class that's constantly being created and destructed, parameter packing will have an effect in efficiency. So now that all the refactorings and fixes are done, I'm bumping the version minor or patch version since it's not a new feature. And after that, some git wrangling and then pushing the changes. So that's basically it. Thanks for watching.